First, though, the big political news of this weekend. After months of tension with his party's leadership, Douglas Carswell, UKIP's only MP, is quitting to go independent. He put out a statement yesterday saying that he was leaving the party amicably and that with Brexit in the bag, there was no reason to stick with UKIP. Well, we're joined in the studio now by the former UKIP leader, Nigel Farage. Hello, thank you for being with us. So, you've dedicated your life to UKIP, you've travelled around the country trying to win elections for them. And this weekend, the party's only MP has quit.
Thank God.
You must be gutted, mustn't you?
Thank God. Now, look, he's been working against us for a very long time. Sadly, too many in UKIP were prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt. I wanted to kick him out back in 2015 for being disloyal, for working against us. But the good thing is, we've got a new leader, and the last thing he wants is somebody causing division. Every time there's a conference, we had problems with Carswell, and I think for Paul Nuttall, this is very good news.
At the same time, though, you've tried to be elected 7 times, and you've lost. Paul Nuttall's tried to get elected 5 times, and he's lost. Shouldn't you be trying to take notes from Douglas Carswell? He's actually managed to win for UKIP.
He has got the most Eurosceptic constituency in the country. Out of all 650 seats, Clacton is the seat where UKIP can win. Now, look, he joined us in 2014. We won that by-election, we won another by-election, and it was a great thing for the party at the time, but it didn't last very long because he never ever believed in the principles that UKIP stood for.
So do you think he's a Conservative infiltrator then?
Well, that was how it turned out, yes. But, I mean, look, this is a guy who always sells himself as being very honourable and different to everybody else. And one of his big crusades in Parliament has been recall, real recall, where he himself has said if 20% of the constituents want a by-election, they should have one. So what we're going to do, we'll test how honourable he is. We're going to write through the Electoral Reform Society to every house in Clacton and ask people whether they want him, as he's moved, to stand for a by-election. And perhaps then we'll find out who the real Douglas Carswell is.
So in that case, then, are you going to put your money where your mouth is? Would you stand in Clacton? Or
no.
What about South Thanet, if they rerun that?
Well, let's see. Let's see. I mean, let's see what happens. This is all in the hands of the Crown Prosecution Service. I can't odds what's going to happen there.
But if they do decide to rerun that election, would you stand?
Probably. And I haven't really made my mind up. Probably. But look, you know, the really big story of the week isn't Douglas Carswell, it's Article 50. It's happening on Wednesday, and we will then have passed the point of no return. We are leaving the European Union, but the point about UKIP is, what terms are we going to leave the European Union under? I mean, just today in the Sunday Times, there's talk that maybe children living in Warsaw will continue to qualify for child benefit. Yes, we're leaving, but UKIP's role, I think now, is to make sure we do it on the right terms.
You're setting out the mission statement of UKIP after Article 50 has been triggered. But of course, it's going to be quite difficult for your party, isn't it? Let's be honest. I mean, that's what Douglas Carswell is saying. UKIP's won the victory, so what's the point in sticking around? It's no wonder, really, that you decided to leave as leadership as well.
Winning a war is very, very important, but also you have to win the peace. The peace is far from won. Already I can see with this government concessions being made over fishing, the desire of the Prime Minister to stay part of the European arrest warrant. You know, this is not over by a long shot.
But you've got no MPs now. UKIP has got no MPs.
Do you know what? With no MPs, we forced a referendum in this country. In many ways, outside Parliament, UKIP's achievement has been astonishing.
I'm keen to talk as well about the tragic attack in London that happened this week, the Westminster terror attacks, where 4 people were killed, including a policeman trying to guard Parliament. Now, in the aftermath of that attack, you took to the American airwaves before much information had come out, and I just want to have a look at what you did say. If you open your door to uncontrolled immigration from Middle Eastern countries, you are inviting in terrorism.
Well, that's right, isn't it?
But it's not relevant to the terror attack,
hang on.
is it?
Five of the eight people who committed that barbarity in Paris had come in across the Mediterranean.
But we're not talking about the barbarity.
The person who drove.
Farage, with respect, we're not talking about the barbarity in Paris.
I know. Actually,
you were talking about the.
Actually, as it turned out, well, the fact that it's homegrown terrorism is even worse. The fact is, this guy was radicalised inside a prison. You know, Theresa May was Home Secretary for 6 years. I'd like to know why people are being radicalised inside schools and prisons. Surely that's something we can prevent.
See, I absolutely accept that that is a huge issue, radicalisation. But I do just want to go back to the specifics, because you were talking about uncontrolled immigration.
Yes, I was.
Just admit you got it wrong. You're supposed to be straight talking about
Goodness
people.
Gracious me.
Because
just have a look. I was talking about terror attacks in Europe, and I said we did not know what the cause of this attack was. I was absolutely clear and specific. However, now that the deal with Turkey is clearly breaking down, very bad relations between the Netherlands and Turkey, Europe now faces perhaps an even bigger migrant tide this summer than it's had before, and it has no way of protecting itself against terrorists coming in. That is a very real issue. And actually, I think it's one of the reasons we voted for Brexit.
You see, again, you're talking about your views on immigration, which I respect.
No,
I
they're not views, they're facts.
They're
facts.
I understand your position on immigration. But what I'm trying to get to is the link between that immigration and what happened, the devastating attack that happened in Westminster. This was a man who was a 52-year-old from Kent, like yourself.
I agree with you. This is worse. This is even worse. The fact that people are being radicalised inside our prisons, and we appear, over the last few years, to have done nothing about it. So we've got two problems. But given we already have a problem, with people being radicalised at home, why on earth would you want to add to it with an irresponsible immigration policy?
You see, that is a different point, though, isn't it? You are conflating.
I think your researchers have made a slight mistake. I was very specific when I talked about jihadism across the whole of Europe, and I repeat the point. As we have a homemade problem already, let's never add to it.
So you admit then that immigration had nothing to do with this terror attack?
Not directly, no. But that's not the point, is it? The point is there are lots of terror attacks taking place all across Europe, and many of them are people who've literally just arrived. Now, that's a bigger problem for France and Belgium than it is for us, because we're not part of the Schengen zone, thank goodness. We're leaving the European Union, even better, but we still have to be on our guard.
So will you apologise then for appearing to suggest that there is a link between uncontrolled immigration and what happened in Westminster?
No, absolutely not.
No.
Of course not.
So what are you exactly saying then, if we're talking again about people who are effectively homegrown terrorists, who are people who are in the UK, who are British, you're talking about issues with the Muslim community. What do you want to actually see happen now?
Well, two things, really. Firstly, people should not be radicalised inside state-run institutions and state-funded institutions, namely schools and prisons. And beyond that, clearly there is the biggest divide is the divide within the Muslim community. The vast majority of Muslim people in Britain want to be integrated, want to be part of our culture, want their kids to play in the street with other kids, and yet, there is this very dangerous minority who have got a very dangerous interpretation of what the latter parts of the Quran mean. And I would like to see actually the Muslim community very openly having a discussion about Islam and what it means in the 21st century. But
this is already happening, isn't it? You are seeing Muslim leaders coming out.
Some.
You're seeing a lot of Muslim leaders coming out and condemning it. And also the other point as well is that this is someone who is a convert to Islam. He's not someone who's brought up as Muslim, which again is a really common factor within many people who go to extremist beliefs.
Listen, the other way people can be radicalised, of course, is through the internet, and that's an even more difficult job, I accept, for the government to deal with. I just think that the Muslim community need to have an open, honest debate about what's going on. For leaders to stand up and say that what this man did, actually, he wasn't really a Muslim at all, that doesn't wash. There needs to be a more honest, open debate about it.
Speaking about an honest debate, that's why it's important, isn't it, not to conflate immigration with what happened in Westminster?
No, look, open-door immigration across the Mediterranean has led directly to terrorist atrocities in Europe, and goodness knows
but not in Britain. There hasn't been in
hundreds
years,
and hundreds of British people,
British-born people committing terrorism.
Well, hundreds of British people have been to fight in Syria, and many of them have come back. I'd rather we didn't accept them back.
Okay. Now, on our last show, where you came on, we talked about President Trump, and you said that his historically poor poll ratings were a great place to start because it could only go up from there. Now, in that time, his poll ratings have slipped. He's failed to get through his flagship healthcare reforms, even to convince his own party that they were a good idea.
Yes.
And he was also been investigated by the FBI for allegedly colluding with Russia. Doesn't sound great, does it?
No, I mean, he has a problem, of course he does, that the entire Washington establishment does not want radical change of any kind at all, and Trump and his administration want to shake things up, want to slim things down, and he's got a big battle against the Washington establishment. I'm very struck that with him failing at this stage to get the health reforms through Congress, all that actually does is strengthen his support with his key voters in the country, because that message, hey, I'm on your side against the establishment, rings true.
Well, that's an interesting way of looking at it, certainly. Nigel Farage, thank you for your time today.